nobody told you the real story of how this country started. Most people think they know it, but trust me, they really don't. There was a moment when America almost never happened at all. One storm, one decision, one winter could have wiped it all out. Honestly, the odds were completely stacked against this place surviving. You won't believe the chaos, the desperation, and the sheer luck involved. These weren't superheroes. They were desperate, scared, and running out of time. Some of them were starving, some were freezing, and some were ready to quit. And yet somehow, this ragged group of people built the most powerful nation on Earth. I'm telling you, the real story of America is wilder than any movie you've ever seen. We are going to go all the way back, before the flags, before the Constitution, before everything. We're talking about the very first sparks that eventually lit this whole country on fire. And some of what I'm about to share genuinely shocked me when I first found out. Stick with me, because this story only gets more jaw-dropping as we go. If you love discovering the hidden, real stories behind the places we all know, hit that subscribe button right now. We drop new videos every week, and trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's go back more than 500 years before America was even a name. Long before any Europeans showed up, this land was already full of life. Millions of native people had been living here for thousands of years. They had cities, trade routes, languages, and entire civilizations already running. No kidding, some of their cities were bigger than London at the time. Then, in 1492, Christopher Columbus landed in the Caribbean and everything began to shift. He wasn't even looking for a new world, he was trying to reach Asia. He got it completely wrong, but that mistake changed the entire planet forever. Spain started sending explorers north and west, claiming land they had never even seen before. And here's where it gets really interesting. England wanted in on this too. England was watching Spain get rich and powerful, and they were not happy about sitting it out. So, in 1587, England tried to plant its first colony on the coast of what is now North Carolina. They called it Roanoke, and over 100 settlers arrived full of hope and big dreams. Then something happened that historians still cannot fully explain to this day. Every single person in that colony just vanished. No bodies, no signs of a fight, no explanation. Just the word Croatan carved into a tree. The Lost Colony of Roanoke remains one of the greatest mysteries in American history. That failure spooked everyone, but England wasn't done trying. Wait, this next part surprised even me when I first read about it. In 1607, England tried again, this time landing at a place called Jamestown in Virginia. These settlers were not farmers or tough outdoorsmen. Most were gentlemen looking for gold. They had almost no practical survival skills and almost no idea what they were doing. Within the first year, over half of them were dead from disease, starvation, and conflict. Things got so bad that one terrible winter became known simply as the starving time. People were eating leather, rats, and things I honestly cannot even bring myself to say out loud. It was absolutely brutal and should have been the end of the whole idea. But one man named John Smith took charge and forced the colony to get organized. He made a rule: if you don't work, you don't eat, and it saved the settlement. Tobacco also turned out to be a miracle crop that made Jamestown finally profitable. And here is where it gets really interesting again. This is where slavery enters the story too. In 1619, the first enslaved Africans were brought to Jamestown against their will. That dark chapter became permanently woven into the fabric of what America would become. No kidding, you cannot tell the story of this country honestly without facing that truth head on. Now, while Jamestown was barely surviving in the South, something completely different was happening up north. In 1620, a group of religious separatists called the Pilgrims set sail from England. They wanted a place where they could practice their faith without being punished for it. The voyage on the Mayflower was brutal. 66 days on a tiny, violent, freezing ocean. When they finally landed in Massachusetts, winter had already arrived and they were totally unprepared. Half of them died in those first months. Half. But a man named Squanto, a member of the Patuxent people, helped them learn to survive. He taught them to plant corn, fish the local waters, and navigate the land. Without his help, the Plymouth colony almost certainly would have collapsed completely. I'm telling you, American history owes so much to people whose names we rarely even hear. And here is where it gets really interesting. More colonies kept coming after that. By the mid-1700s, 13 separate British colonies stretched along the entire East Coast. Each one had its own personality, its own economy, and its own way of doing things. But they all shared one growing frustration. The British government kept controlling everything from far away. Taxes kept coming without the colonies having any say in the matter at all. No voice, no vote, no representation, and people were getting seriously fed up. Then came the moment that lit the fuse, the Boston Massacre in 1770. British soldiers fired into a crowd of colonists, and 5 people were killed in the street. The whole colonial world heard about it, and the anger started boiling over fast. 3 years later came the Boston Tea Party. Colonists dumped an entire shipment of British tea into the harbor. It wasn't just about tea, it was a declaration that they were done being pushed around. Britain responded by cracking down hard, and that crackdown pushed the colonies closer together. Wait, this next part is the moment where everything truly changed forever. In April 1775, the first shots of the American Revolution were fired at Lexington and Concord. Nobody was calling it a revolution yet. Most people just wanted their rights back. But those first shots echoed across the colonies like thunder. A ragtag group of farmers and tradespeople were now facing the most powerful military on Earth. Honestly, on paper, they had absolutely no chance of winning this fight. But then came a man who would hold it all together through the darkest moments imaginable. George Washington was not a perfect man, but he was exactly what that moment needed. He kept his army alive through brutal winters, devastating losses, and constant doubt. The winter at Valley Forge in 1777 nearly broke everything. Men were barefoot in the snow. Soldiers were starving, sick, and quitting in large numbers every single week. And yet Washington refused to surrender and refused to let the dream die with him. Meanwhile, on July 4th, 1776, the Continental Congress signed the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson wrote the words that would echo for centuries: "All men are created equal." No kidding, those words were radical and dangerous and world-changing all at once. France eventually jumped in to help the colonies, and that changed the military balance completely. By 1781, the British surrendered at Yorktown, and the war was effectively over. America had done the impossible. It had beaten the British Empire. And here is where it gets really interesting one more time. Winning the war was actually the easy part. Now they had to build a country from scratch. The first attempt, called the Articles of Confederation, was honestly a bit of a disaster. The government was too weak, states fought each other, and the whole thing was falling apart. So in 1787, some of the brightest minds in America gathered in Philadelphia to figure it out. They debated, argued, compromised, and eventually created the United States Constitution. It wasn't perfect. They even had to add the Bill of Rights right away to fix missing pieces. But it created a system flexible enough to survive for over 200 years. In 1789, George Washington became the very first president of the United States.